This video will be ranking the albums by the band Candlemass. This is a band that has changed their lineup often, so for every album I'll just give you the year it came out, I'll mention the vocalists, and anything else important, some important songs. This ranking is worst to best. They have 13 studio albums. I will be including the new one, Sweet Evil Sun, so let me get right into it. Number 13 is a Dactylis Glomerata. This was released on April 13, 1998 on Music for Nations. This was originally planned to be an album, like a sideband project by the bass player and founding member Leif Edling, and the record company wanted it to be like a Candlemass record, and usually when that happens, it's not really a good thing. The vocalist here, his name is Bjorn Flodkist, and he was on a few albums. The album's not very bad. It has a 90s sound, but a lot of bands at that time, they were kind of doing that alternative metal sound. One of the standout songs is called Apathy, very like a 90s sounding song. It has that like slow bass intro. And the vocals are kind of like droney. I think they're trying to emulate like Chino Moreno from Deftones. And then they do like a little bit of like a Marilyn Manson kind of thing. So that kind of sounds weird for Candlemass. But you do get some like feedback-driven guitar riffs towards the middle of the song. Another standout song is called Dust Flow. It has like atmospheric sounds and clean guitars. Kind of slow, kind of strange. The album's very different. Nothing like Candlemass has ever done. I guess you can call it more Candlebox than Candlemass, but it's not horrible. It's just at the bottom. Number 12, From the 13th Sun. This one also has Bjorn Flodkvist on vocals, released on September 6, 1999 on Music for Nations. And this one does continue that sound they had on Dactylis Glomerata. And all of the song titles are like science fiction themed. We have Droid, Tot, Elephant Star, Zog, Galatea, and those are some of the names. Kind of the weirdest album. They dedicated it to Black Sabbath, but it's like early Black Sabbath, but with like a space rock theme and a 90s sound. So the opener, Droid, has some pretty good like guitar riffs, but there's lots of like sci-fi laser sounds and things like that. Tot starts with like thunder and rain, so you're kind of thinking of like the first Black Sabbath album, the title track, but then it's more like ambient and spacey. Elephant Star, kind of like a complete turn. It's very heavy, kind of like a thrash metal guitar riff, and heavy drum beats in the vocals. And this one they're trying to sound a little bit like Ozzy Osbourne, so that's kind of like more that like a Sabbathy type of song. Another song, ARX/NGB891, it's just space sounds and lasers and flying ships, but once the riff kicks in, it's not too bad. A lot of the songs have a similar style. Oil kind of sounds like an updated version of Planet Caravan, more of a 90s sound, but it's their most ambient album. It's number 12, not bad, but just the other ones are a lot better. Number 11, I have Chapter 6. The vocalist is Thomas Vikström. They call it Chapter 6. It's their 5th studio album, but I think they counted the live album, so that's why they call it Chapter 6, I guess. Released on May 25th, 1992 on Music for Nations. I think after listening to these, to the discography, one after the other, this is where they started to lose me. I think it's a little closer to traditional metal. Some songs were a little faster, some were more like mid-80s Black Sabbath. It's not really bad. This album did get a few good reviews, but it wasn't really Candlemass for me. The best song, probably Temple of the Dead. It's one of those like dungeon synth melodies in the intro. And they got some guitar riffs and a little more like progressive sounding, kind of like old school Candlemass, but like the tempos are turned up a little bit. So they use keyboards on this song and it works very well. And another good song called Black Eyes has some of those like chunky riffs reminiscent of like 70s Black Sabbath. But it's like a little bit more speed. Not a bad album, but I think that they changed the sound a little bit. So I think if you're looking for more of like a heavy metal sound as opposed to doom, you might like this. I think I've read some reviews saying this was like an underrated gem, but the other ones are a lot better. Number 10 is The Door to Doom, and this is a recent album released in 2019. And the vocalist is Johan Längvist, and he was one of the original vocalists. It was actually on the original vocals on the first album. And this one is very good. The new one, Sweet Evil Sun, I have that one ranked higher, but it's still pretty good. I think the single Astralis, the Great Octopus, that one had Tony Iommi. That was a good one. I think in general the album lacks memorability. I listened to this a lot back in 2019, and then I went back to it to prepare for this review, and like I didn't remember a lot of it because I did like listen to it a lot back in the day. I think the last three songs are the best. Black Trinity has that thick, distorted sound. House of Doom, that haunting intro with the rain and thunder again, the thick bass sound and the beefy guitar riffs. And Omega Circle, just lots of fat guitar riffs, soaring vocals. So it's okay for me, and it has like a better back half. At number 9, Death Magic Doom. This one has Robert Lowe on vocals, and I think he did about like 3 albums in a row. So this album was released on April 3rd, 2009 on Nuclear Blast. This is the second album with Robert. He was actually in another Doom band called Solitude Eternus, so he was kind of a good match. I think like his 3 albums are pretty good. You know, the other one, King of Grey Albums, I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but that one was like a lot better. But I think he was a really solid addition to this group. I think this is not a bad album. The best song is probably The Bleeding Baroness with a haunting guitar riff, some dark operatic vocals by Robert Lowe, and the guitar riffs. Very heavy, distorted tone. You got kind of like that electric funeral type of tone to it. Clouds of Dementia, that's kind of like an old school Candlemass. Epic guitar riffs, dark and doomy vocals. The opening track, If I Ever Die, that's kind of one of the faster moving ones, but I like that one. It reminded me a little bit of Iron Maiden, maybe because of the tempo, but all in all, it's decent, but I think like the other ones with Robert Lowe are better, so that goes on to number 8 with Psalms of the Dead with Robert Lowe, released on June 29th, 2012 with Napalm Records. This is his 3rd album, and this one is good. A little better than Death Magic Doom. And this album was promoted to be like their final album. And this was before Johan Langvis came back for Door to Doom, which I just talked about. On this album, they give you those tried and true slow riffs. Then they have some faster traditional metal, and they have some of that Hammond organ, so that's all good stuff. The album mixes the sound throughout the songs. A few good songs here. The Lights of Phoebe, that has some haunting organ sounds, very atmospheric. It goes into a heavy riff, and that can be compared to some of like their 80s albums. So Robert Lowe has a vocal style similar to like Messiah on this track. He's the other vocalist I will be talking about like in the front half of this ranking. Title track is just old school epic Candlemass, some deep string bends, haunting keyboards, and just more atmospheric. You get these heavy choruses, and it's some good stuff. Number 7, King of the Grey Islands. This is the debut album with Robert Lowe. This one was released on June 22nd, 2007 on Nuclear Blast. I went into this with low expectations, given that it was a completely different vocalist, but it's actually like pretty good. It's heavy and has some like atmosphere in it. You also hear a little bit of like Alice in Chains here. It's a dark album, lyrics about suicide and depression and other dark topics. Lots of good stuff here. Destroyer, that one has slow, doomy riffs. Robert Lowe gives a very good vocal performance here. The guitar riffs are dark and heavy. They change tempos from like fairly slow to very slow. Another good song, Embracing the Sticks. That one reminded me of like Slayer's Dead Skin Mask, that had a similar like guitar riff. It's just very dark. And it's, in general, the songs are good, they're catchy, and it's just a good album. At number 6 is Candlemass, the self-titled. This was released on May 3rd, 2005, and this is the last album with Messiah Marcolin. He actually came back after like a few albums. It's a classic lineup, so it has a lot of the same lineup as those 80s albums. It's good. It's like their 80s stuff, but with a modern sound. It's still Doom. It still has some energy, hints of traditional metal. I think they use more like power chords as opposed to those like slow Tony Iommi style guitar riffs. My favorite song, Born in a Tank. That one's a little faster. It has that heavy galloping guitar riffs, and the vocals, Messiah, he has more like an operatic vocal style. So you get a lot of that on this album. The album has different like twists and turns. You got some classic guitar riffs, cool guitar solos. Another good song I like, Seven Silver Keys. It's classic Candlemass with slow and heavy riffs. Something that could have been on one of their like late 80s albums, but overall, very good album from their later days. Number 5, I have the new one, Sweet Evil Son. This one has Johan Langvist on vocals. Like I said before, he was the vocalist on their debut album. This one's good. I've talked about it a lot. It was on my top 50. I did a full review. It was released not too long ago, November 18, 2022 on Napalm. It's just very good. I don't really have to spend too much time talking about it, but favorite songs, Wizard of the Vortex, just great guitar riffs, Sweet Evil Son. Now it's very catchy. You'll be singing along with that one in your head. Some good deep tracks are Angel Battle with the slow guitar riffs and the fat, chunky sound. My favorite song, Scandinavian Gods, just super catchy. It'll stick in your head for days. It's just a great song, really great comeback album. So this is like the comeback that they really needed. So now the top 4, and these are they're really killer ones from the 80s. Tales of Creation with Messiah Marcolin, released on September 25th, 1989 on Metal Blade and Enigma. This one includes a remake of Under the Oak that was from their first album. It's just very good. Maybe a step down from the first 3 albums, but in general just very solid. The overall sound is very big, very epic. The guitar riffs are heavy. There are more keyboards. You get a little more atmosphere in the background, and it's doom metal. They get closer to traditional metal at times, but the sound is heavy. You got some good songs here. You got Voices in the Wind. That one has a young girl speaking, and it goes into the new version of Under the Oak, where the main guitar riff is kind of a little thrashier, I guess. But the vocals are still very operatic. They're evil sounding and just very good. We got some slow, heavy guitar riffs, and just overall, a great album. That's all I got to say. Number 3, Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus. This is their debut album with Johan Langvist, who, as I was saying before, was the vocalist on the previous 2 Candlemass albums. So, released on June 10th, 1986 through Black Dragon Records. I thought this was very solid. In general, the sound is very slow, dark, heavy, haunting. My favorite song is Solitude. Just has that slow riff. Great guitar sound, just cool mix of clean guitars in the intro. The main guitar riff is very epic. They have some haunting keyboards that create these cool atmospheres. Kind of like sounds from a horror movie soundtrack or dungeon synth. That black metal subgenre, but a really early version of that. So they do some of that on this album, but then they do some faster stuff like Blackstone Wielder that has a really great guitar riff similar to neoclassical. But in general, just really killer riffs. I mean, it's really great. The original version of Under the Oak is here, and it's just really great. Songs are dark and menacing. The album has some great vocals by Johan, and he was not even an official band member at the time, and he would not actually return officially until Door to Doom in 2019. So that's kind of interesting. Now I'm at my top 2. My number 2 is Nightfall. This one has Messiah Marcolin on vocals. Released on November 9th, 1987 through Axis Records. Really great follow-up to the debut. Has some more atmosphere, a bigger sound. The vocals are more operatic. They add a little bit of speed and a little bit of more heaviness. It's bigger. It's a little better. And the word for this album is epic. The riffs are very big and memorable. First album with Messiah, so he kind of brought this different element to the band. He has the perfect voice for this type of music. And you got some great songs. At the Gallows End. It has some melodic leads and clean guitars, and they do some folk metal. They do some doom metal. You got some instrumentals here and there, some classical stuff. They do Marche Funebre. That's a classical cover. My favorite song, that's the most popular one, Bewitched. It has the cheesiest music video ever, but it's so awesome. It's just reminiscent of Black Sabbath, and it's just very epic. The guitar riffs are big and chunky, and a nice balance of the guitars and keyboards, and just an awesome album. It's super solid, but not my favorite. My favorite is Ancient Dreams. This one has Messiah Marcolin, released on November 23rd, 1988, on Axis Records, and then later on Metal Blade Records and Enigma. It's just very solid. Now this has the best guitar riffs, most memorable songs. Favorite song, Mirror Mirror. Just has a sound it's just bigger. The riffs are big, they're melodic. The main riff sounds kind of like these early Black Sabbath riffs, but they kind of change it up a little. They do some palm muted riffing. And Messiah, he just has the perfect vocals for, all the songs in this album. The style is operatic and dark. Another great song, Darkness in Paradise. You got the harmonized guitars, the cool deep bass guitar sound, and it's just very dark. And it's kind of like a slower song, but it's really good. And another good song, Ancient Dreams. It's very dark and evil, almost like a classical sounding opening guitar riff. Has those operatic vocals, the dark tones, and overall a great album. That's my number one. So that is all. Comment below, give me your ranking of Candlemass, and thanks for watching. This might be my last ranking of the year, but I've been saying that all throughout December, so who knows. But thanks for watching. See you in the next one.